For 2,000 years, it was just a prophecy. Today, that's changing. Many believe that the building of the third temple is a major prophetic sign of the end of the world. But has any progress been made with the third temple? You are going to be shocked when you find out the 10 specific preparations that have been completed for the third temple. And by the time we get to number 10, you're going to understand why this isn't just a religious story. This is a geopolitical earthquake waiting to happen. Preparation number 1. The perfect red heifers. What if I told you that 5 perfect red heifers were just flown into Israel? And they may be the final missing piece before the third temple is built? You've heard rumors. You've heard prophecy. But now, it's real. The Bible talks about a mysterious ritual, one that hasn't been performed for nearly 2,000 years. A ritual involving a perfect red heifer. No spots, no blemishes, never yoked. Why? Because only the ashes of a red heifer can purify the Jewish priests before temple worship begins. Without the red heifer, the temple cannot be used. And for an unclean person, they shall take of the ashes of the burnt heifer of purification for sin. And now, they have the heifers, not just 1, but 5, brought from Texas, raised under strict rabbinical supervision, and waiting for the day of sacrifice. Why now? Why these heifers? The arrival of the red heifer means one thing: the temple is closer than ever. In September 2022, 5 red heifers were flown into Israel from Texas. They were carefully selected, examined for blemishes, checked for even 2 non-red hairs, which would disqualify them. And when they passed inspection, they were greeted with dancing and celebration. But not by the whole world, because while most ignored it, those who understand prophecy held their breath. Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Daniel 8:14. This isn't just a religious ceremony. This is prophecy in motion, because the Bible says, "Let no man deceive you, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, who opposeth and exalteth himself, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God." 2 Thessalonians 2:3-4. The Antichrist will sit in the third temple, but before he can sit, the temple must be built. And before it's built, the red heifer must be sacrificed. We are almost there. So what's the timeline? Here's what's expected. 1 will be selected for sacrifice. The ceremony will happen outside Jerusalem, likely on the Mount of Olives. The ashes will be mixed, stored, and used to purify the new temple site. The third temple will be ready for construction or dedication. Prophecy will move forward fast. The Temple Institute has already announced their intention to perform the red heifer ceremony before Passover this year. That's not next year. That's not someday. That's months away. But to understand why this matters, you need to see what else they've been preparing. Preparation number 2. The sacred vessel's recreation. While the world was distracted, master craftsmen in Jerusalem have been recreating something extraordinary. Over 60 sacred vessels, each one crafted according to biblical specifications that haven't been relevant since 70 AD. But here's where this gets absolutely incredible. I'm about to show you items that are worth more than most people's houses, crafted with precious metals and ancient techniques that took years to perfect. This is the Temple Institute's recreation of the Golden Menorah. 95 pounds of pure gold. Price tag, $2 million. But here's what's really stunning. This isn't a replica for display. This is a functional menorah, designed to be used in actual temple service. And it's not just the menorah. What you're seeing now, and what I'm about to show you, represents the largest collection of temple vessels created since the destruction of the Second Temple. But here's the question that's going to shock you. Why spend millions of dollars creating functional temple vessels if you're not planning to use them? The answer to that question is coming up, and it's going to change everything you think you know about this story. Incense vessels designed to burn the exact spices mentioned in Exodus. Measuring cups calibrated to biblical standards. Silver trumpets that can produce the exact tones described in Numbers. Each item represents months or years of research, craftsmanship, and expense. But vessels are just objects. What about the people? What about the priests who would actually use these items? That brings us to preparation number 3, and this is going to absolutely blow your mind. Preparation number 3. Priestly Training Program, 2130 to 2430. What you're watching right now has never been seen in 2,000 years. These are modern Jewish men, descendants of the priestly tribe of Levi, being trained to perform temple services that their ancestors haven't practiced since the Roman destruction of Jerusalem. Picture this moment. You're watching the restoration of knowledge that was lost for 2,000 years. These men are learning rituals that their great-great-great-grandfathers, going back 70 generations, could only dream of performing again. In 2009, the Temple Institute built a field school in Mizpeh, Jericho, about 20 minutes from Jerusalem. Here, Kohanim, Jewish priests, and Levites undergo rigorous training to ensure they can perform every aspect of temple service perfectly. And here's something that's going to shock you. In 2015, these trainees completed something extraordinary. The first accurate, authentic reenactment of the Korban Pesach, the Passover offering, in 2,000 years. And speaking of when the time comes, you need to see what they've prepared for the temple itself. Because what you're about to see is going to answer the question everyone's asking. Are they really serious about rebuilding the third temple? Preparation number 4. Architectural blueprints complete. What you're looking at right now are not conceptual drawings. These are operational blueprints for the third temple, created to modern construction standards and ready for immediate implementation. But here's where this gets absolutely mind-blowing. Not only are the blueprints complete, but they've built a scale model that you can actually visit right now in Jerusalem. This is a 1/50th scale model of the third temple, exact in every detail. The square building measures 150 meters long by 150 meters wide in the actual plans. The model will be displayed at a new visitors center opening in Jerusalem in 2025. But here's what most people don't realize. These aren't just religious drawings. These are architectural plans that incorporate modern building codes, electrical systems, plumbing, heating, and ventilation. This is a blueprint for a functioning modern temple. As we walk through this virtual temple, you can see every detail has been planned. The chamber for the Sanhedrin, the court of the priests, the altar of sacrifice, the Holy of Holies. Every measurement corresponds exactly to biblical descriptions. But blueprints are just paper. What about the actual materials? What about the physical objects that would go inside this temple? That brings us to something that's going to absolutely shock you. Preparation number 5. High priest garments. Ready. What you're seeing right now took over a decade to create. These are the complete garments of the Jewish high priest, recreated according to exact biblical specifications and ready to be worn. Think about this moment. These garments represent 2,000 years of hoping, dreaming, and praying. Every thread has been researched. Every gemstone has been selected according to ancient texts. Every detail represents the fulfillment of prophecies that seemed impossible just decades ago. This is the breastplate of the high priest. 12 stones, each one engraved with the name of one of the 12 tribes of Israel. According to Exodus 28, verses 15 to 21, fashion a breastpiece for making decisions. Mount 4 rows of precious stones on it. There are to be 12 stones, one for each of the names of the sons of Israel. Each stone on this breastplate is authentic. We're talking about real sapphires, real emeralds, real diamonds. The gold work alone took master craftsmen over 2 years to complete. But here's the question that's keeping religious leaders awake at night. Who will wear these garments? Because according to biblical law, only one man can serve as high priest at a time. And the selection process for that man is about to begin. But garments are just clothing. What about the physical foundation of the temple itself? What about the actual stones that would be used in construction? That brings us to preparation number 6, and what you're about to see is going to change everything. Preparation number 6. Altar stones collected. We're standing at the Dead Sea, the lowest point on Earth. But what happened here in 2010 is going to shock you. Temple Institute representatives came to this exact location to collect something that's been waiting here for thousands of years. These are the stones that will form the altar of the third temple. But these aren't just any stones. According to Deuteronomy 27:5, build there an altar to the Lord your God, an altar of stones. Do not use any iron tool on them. Every stone you're seeing has never been touched by metal tools. They were formed by natural geological processes and collected by hand. According to biblical law, this is the only type of stone that can be used for temple construction. Imagine the moment when these stones were collected. Workers standing where Moses himself might have stood, selecting stones according to laws given 3,500 years ago, for a temple that everyone said would never be built. But stones are just the beginning. What about the people who would govern this temple? What about the religious authority that would oversee temple operations? That brings us to something that's going to absolutely blow your mind. Preparation number 7. Sanhedrin Chamber Designed. What you're looking at is the design for the most important room that most people have never heard of. This is the assembly hall for the modern Sanhedrin, the supreme religious authority that will govern the Third Temple. But here's what's really incredible about this design. It's not just theoretical. The Sanhedrin has already been reconstituted. They're meeting right now, and they're actively planning for temple operations. Picture this space, a grand chamber echoing the chamber of hewn stone from Herod's temple. Circular seating for 71 members of the Sanhedrin. A central fountain creating a serene atmosphere for religious deliberation. Which brings us to something you need to hear. Preparation number 8. Levitical choir established. This is the Temple Institute's Levitical choir, performing the exact musical traditions that accompanied temple sacrifices in ancient times. And now, for the first time in 2 millennia, they're being performed again in Jerusalem. Just last year, during the intermediate days of Sukkot, the Levitical choir joined dozens of other musical Levites in a festive performance of Psalm 27 at the southern wall of the Temple Mount. Music is just one part of the temple service. What about the visual elements? What about the colors and dyes that would adorn the temple? That brings us to a scientific breakthrough that's going to shock you. Preparation number 9. Crimson dye rediscovered. For 2,000 years, nobody knew how to produce the exact crimson dye mentioned in the Bible. The secret was lost when the Second Temple was destroyed. But Professor Amparo found it. This crimson dye isn't just decorative. According to biblical law, it must be used in the high priest's garments, the massive curtain separating the Holy of Holies from the holy place, and it's an essential ingredient in the mixture combined with ashes of the red heifer. Watch this process. These worm eggs, when processed according to ancient techniques that Professor Amparo had to reconstruct from fragmentary historical sources, produce the exact shade of crimson described in Exodus. Think about this moment. A color that disappeared from the world 2,000 years ago has been restored in our generation. The exact crimson that adorned Solomon's temple can now adorn the Third Temple. But all of these preparations, the heifers, the vessels, the training, the blueprints, the garments, the stones, the chamber, the choir, the dye, all of it means nothing without one final element. And what you're about to see is going to explain why governments around the world are now paying attention to this story. Preparation number 10. Political momentum building. For decades after 1967, only a handful of Jews would ascend the Temple Mount, and they weren't allowed to pray. Today, tens of thousands of Jews ascend the Temple Mount every year. They're now allowed to openly pray, to sing, and to prostrate themselves in worship. The path to complete Jewish freedom of access and worship on the Temple Mount remains long, but according to Temple Mount activists, it's clearly unstoppable. So here's where we are right now. 4 red heifers are qualified and in the proper age window. All temple vessels are complete. Priests are trained. Blueprints are ready. Political support is building. But there's one question that's keeping intelligence agencies around the world awake at night. When will the ceremony actually happen? And what will the world look like when it does? If everything is ready, the blueprints, the priests, the furniture, even the red heifer, then why hasn't the Third Temple been built? There are powerful forces standing in the way. Some political, some religious, some spiritual. And until they're removed, prophecy can't move forward. Or can it? Obstacle 1. The Dome of the Rock. Let's start with the biggest barrier. The Dome of the Rock. It's one of the holiest sites in Islam. It sits right on the Temple Mount, the exact spot where the First and Second Temples once stood. And right now, no Jewish construction is allowed there. Any attempt to build the temple would cause a global eruption of protest, violence, and possibly war. Muslims believe the Temple Mount belongs to them. Jews believe it belongs to them. And the rest of the world? They're too afraid to touch it. The Dome of the Rock was built in 691 AD, on top of the Jewish temple ruins. That's over 1,300 years ago, and it's never been demolished or moved since. Until this obstacle is removed, the Third Temple can't rise. But prophecy says it will. So what's going to happen to the dome? Something must fall, for something else to be raised. Obstacle 2. Political pressure. The second barrier? Politics. Right now, the idea of rebuilding the temple is a political nightmare. Israel is surrounded by enemies. Every decision is under global scrutiny. If the Israeli government even suggested rebuilding the temple, the United Nations would condemn it. The Arab world would rise up, and nations would threaten war. So most leaders stay quiet. They delay, they avoid, they sidestep, because they know one wrong move could spark global chaos. But what if that chaos is part of the plan? What if prophecy isn't waiting for peace, but for crisis. Politics may stall it, but they won't stop it, because prophecy doesn't ask for permission. There are already Jewish politicians in Israel's Knesset who publicly support rebuilding the temple, even today. They're not loud, but they're not backing down either. Obstacle 3. Division among the Jews. Here's something few people talk about. Many Jewish people don't agree on rebuilding the temple. Some are ultra-Orthodox. Some are secular. Some fear it will provoke war. Others believe only the Messiah should rebuild it. Even religious leaders are divided. Some say it's time now. Others say it's too dangerous. This internal conflict is one of the quietest but strongest barriers. Because without unity, there can be no movement. The enemy loves division, because divided people can't build holy things. But one event, one breakthrough, could unite them all in an instant. What could suddenly change Jewish minds and unify their will? Could it be an attack? A miracle? A treaty? Obstacle 4. Global religious tension. Here's the truth. The Third Temple doesn't just affect Israel. It affects all three major religions: Judaism, Islam, and yes, even Christianity. For Muslims, it's a threat. For Jews, it's a promise. For Christians, it's a sign. And that makes the temple one of the most controversial topics in the world. Religious leaders from every background are watching, because they know if the temple rises, it changes everything. And there was given me a reed, and the angel stood, saying, "Rise and measure the temple of God." Revelation 11:1. Some Islamic scholars already fear that the red heifers brought to Israel are a signal that the Jews are preparing for temple sacrifices. And they're not wrong. The temple is more than a building. It's a battleground of faith. When religion collides with prophecy, there is no neutral ground. Obstacle 5. Spiritual warfare. The fifth and final barrier? Spiritual warfare. Because the temple isn't just a religious building, it's a place where God once dwelled, and Satan wants no part of that. The enemy knows the Bible, he knows the prophecies, and he knows that when the temple is rebuilt, and after that, Jesus returns. That's why this battle is more than political, more than religious. It's a battle in the heavenly realm. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in high places. Ephesians 6:12. Before heaven touches the earth, hell will throw everything it has. Could the spiritual opposition we're seeing now be the final stall before the temple rises? First comes resistance, then comes movement, then comes the temple. And once that happens, the countdown begins. Let's imagine the future. The dome is removed or bypassed. A political deal opens the door. The Jewish people unite. Global religion is stunned. And the enemy is pushed back. Then, the temple begins to rise, stone by stone. Priests are called. Sacrifices resume, and the world watches in awe or fear. Because when the temple returns, so does the conflict. But also, so does the king. The temple may begin with celebration, but it ends with confrontation.